Back to Shire Travels. In this one we head back to the west coast of Australia and we are going to be driving from Perth down to Albany. We did this trip back in November 2018 and it was part of the Follow the Sun relay. This was organised by Let's Go Caravan Camping, Dometic and Winnebago, and they supplied a motorhome and they asked people, members of the public basically, to drive different legs of the Big Lap. We applied to do Perth to Albany because we wanted to explore Margaret River. They also allowed a week for that leg of the trip, and that just worked in with the amount of annual leave we had. To apply, we had to go onto their website, we had to tell them a bit about ourselves, give them a link to one of our Instagram accounts so that they could pretty much see we knew how to use it, how hashtags worked, all of that sort of thing. Because the trip would be to promote caravanning, camping, getting around Australia, showing where you can go and what you can do. And they needed people to be able to use social media. They wanted people to be able to write blogs about where they're going as well. We had to kind of show that, yep, we could do all that sort of thing. They contacted us shortly after we applied and said, yep, great, we want you to drive this leg of the trip. Dometic were the main sponsor of the event. You may notice in these pictures and videos that we are wearing Dometic hats, and that is why. As well as driving around and promoting the event on social media, we also, at a couple of caravan parks, hosted like a happy hour event where we talked to people who were staying there about the event, tried to get them to follow on social media, etc. Once they said, yep, you're in, we want you to do it, they sent us through a draft itinerary of where we were going to stay, the things that they thought we could go and see, things we could do. They also sent us through a brief of what they wanted from us in terms of blog posts, etc., which was really useful because we had never done anything like this before. This was 2018 and I don't think really content creation, full-time travel, that sort of thing, YouTube, Instagram wasn't really a thing. I think that came in more just after the pandemic. So having that brief was really useful. Now, we had to pay for our own flights, insurance, we paid for our own tours. They did pay for some accommodation, but I think we paid for most of it. They did, however, give us $500 for the week to put towards fuel, food, and accommodation that we had to pay for ourselves. The motorhome that we had was a Winnebago. It was a really nice van, very big, very comfortable, plenty of places to sit. It was quite a, I guess, standard motorhome layout. It had a double bed above the cabin, which was where we slept, a small seating area, kitchen area to one side, separate shower toilet, and then a big kind of club lounge at the back. The club lounge at the back could turn into a queen bed, however, we just preferred having a bigger seating area, so we slept above the cab. We did this trip in November. The weather there was actually pretty good. The southwest of WA is quite notorious for having unpredictable weather, for it to be quite cold compared to the rest of the states. We had a bit of a mixed bag of weather, some really windy days, some days which were just perfect, blue sky, no wind. Some days which were pretty cold and raining. A whole mixed bag. The days when the weather was good though, it was definitely hot enough to swim. This will be a two-part video. When I was going through the footage of this, I thought, yeah, it'll just be probably one 30-minute video. But because we were there to create content, we did so much. You will see in these two videos, it was absolutely jam-packed and I had so much content. We flew from Melbourne to Perth. Our first stop was to Rockingham. We took a ferry out to Penguin Island. As you might have guessed it, Penguin Island is home to a colony of penguins. They are fairy penguins or little penguins. They're probably only about this big. Very, very cute. The smallest type of penguin there is. The ferry ride over is only about 5 minutes. When we were there, it was blowing an absolute gale and the sea was really rough. Now, it is free to go on to Penguin Island. However, the ferry is privately operated and you do need to pay. It was $25 for an adult return, which does sound a lot. However, it includes a $10 marine levy that you do have to pay for going onto the island. Now, if you don't want to pay for the ferry, you can actually walk out to the island. There is a sandbar that runs between the island and the mainland. It really is not that far to go. However, you do have to time it perfectly when it is a really, really low tide. You don't want to get caught out and have the tide rise and next thing you know, you're swimming rather than walking. At the time we visited, there was the Penguin Island Discovery Centre. You could go in and the keepers would talk to you about the penguins that they've got there. Some of them there might have been injured or sick, and they talk through how they help get them back into full health. That's now unfortunately closed. I don't know if it's that it still operates and it's not just open to the general public, or if maybe that whole facility is now gone, I'm not too sure. It's sad that it's closed because it was a really good experience to be in there up close with the penguins. They had a pool in the middle and you could see the penguins swimming around in there, having a great time, getting fed. after the Discovery Centre, we decided to do a bit of a walk around the island. It's not a very big island at all. We went on a boardwalk up to the top of the island. It is a berg sanctuary, so you do have to be careful where you go. You can see out to the mainland there. You can also see the beautiful water surrounding there. It's very shallow, very blue. It was really nice, but as I said before, it was so windy. WA, windy always. It was to be expected. We then made our way back down to the jetty area. We saw this lizard sunbaking. We also had a look at some of the beaches there. Really nice if you can get a spot out of the wind. We also had this large grassy area here with a few picnic tables. It really is a beautiful spot. You could park yourself up for the day there, enjoy the beautiful beaches as well. It was then time for us to head back to the mainland and on to our next destination, which was Mandurah. We arrived in Mandurah in the afternoon and we checked into the Mandurah Tourist Park. We then decided to head back into Mandurah for a bit of a look around. We visited the Anzac Memorial that they have on the riverfront there. It was a really beautiful spot. Lots of nice tall marble posts and a marble floor there as well. Very beautiful spot. We then went and checked out some of their Instagram spots. If you look on the Mandurah kind of city council website, you have a map of all the different Instagram spots that they have. I think it's quite nice when a town does this. There are some towns around there, Mandurah, Rockingham, Bunbury. They're a little bit same, and I always think it's good when a town goes to a little bit of effort. It might seem a little bit, I don't know, cringe, that's Instagram spots, but just something to bring people into the area, get them walking around, taking photos, etc. We've got this really cool laneway with multicolored bricks. You can sit on this little board here and it looks like you're on a swing, which is pretty cool. This heart that you can sit in, a photo frame like this. They got things like murals painted onto the floor. They also have the Mandurah Giants now. Those weren't built until 2022, so a few years after we were there. But again, just something extra to try and explore. There are some which you can only properly see them when you're on the water. There are some which are hidden. Definitely worth checking out. The next day we got up early and we did a walking tour of Mandurah's historic sites. This was organised through the Mandurah Museum and it was free, which was great. There were only the two of us on the tour and the guy from the museum took us all around the town. Very easy walking tour. It went for an hour. We didn't go up steps or go too far, anything like that. We just went to a few historic areas around the town. Really good. The guy who took us around was really informative, as you would imagine. It ended up back at the Mandurah Museum. We definitely recommend the tour. You can't get much for free these days. If you are in the Mandurah area, check out the website to see when the tours are running. After having lunch at a place on the water, we then hopped on a 1-hour dolphin cruise. This went through the river and then the waterways, kind of canals around the Mandurah area. It was around $50 per person and they guarantee that you will see a dolphin. Now we did think that we would definitely see one because when we were having lunch by the water, we could see the dolphins kind of hanging around in the marina sort of area. It was a really good tour. As the boat's driving along, the dolphins jump through the wake. Really cool. The boat isn't too big itself. I think maybe there would have been 20 or 30 people on there. Plenty of places to see the dolphins as well. If you're on either side of the boat, they jump either side of the wake. You don't have to worry too much about kind of fighting to get a spot. The boat slowed down a couple of times as well and the dolphins came up, had a bit of a look at us and swam off. It was really cool. Definitely recommend it. There are heaps of tour operators there, so have a Google and see what's around. That evening we went back to our caravan park. We were hosting our happy hour, drinks, food, that sort of thing, and talking all about the Follow the Sun relay. Lots of people came. I mean, free food and drinks, why wouldn't you? We talked a little bit about what the trip was. They could find us on social media, etc. The only thing that was a little bit confusing was because it was sponsored by Dometic, we had Dometic hats on. People thought we worked for Dometic, so we had a few people bail us up about the fact that their fridge was taking too long to be repaired, etc. The next day we started heading further south and we were heading to the Collie and Bunbury districts. On our way down, we drove past the Lake Clifton Thrombolites. Now, if you watch our Perth to Broome video, you might have seen me talking about the stromatolites that we drove past, and I said they were 3.5 billion years old. Now, if you do a bit of research and Googling online, that is the impression that you get, that that is how old they are. But I think the information is very confusing. They are not 3.5 billion years old. They represent what life was like 3.5 billion years ago. But for some reason, people call them living fossils. It's very confusing. So I'm not even going to attempt to discuss how old the thrombolites are. I guess look on Google and try and decipher the information that is out there. They were somewhat interesting to see. When we were there doing the boardwalk around there, it was absolutely pouring with rain. It was overcast. We had a really quick look and then left. I did try and have a quick look online at some of the information there to see if I could work out how old they are. The only thing that they did mention many times on the website when I had a look at this area was don't leave cash or valuables in your car. So it must be a little bit of a hot spot for theft. So just be aware of that. Because the weather wasn't great, we were just looking for random things to do really. We went to the Big Orange. This is a big orange at the top of a tower. It's free to enter, go up, have a look around. It overlooks some orchards. Quite nice, just a random place to stop off while the weather was bad. They did have a winery there though, or it might have been a brewery, and we did go in for a quick tasting, again, just to get out of the weather. Because we still had several hours before we could check into our accommodation, we went to the Dardanup Heritage Park. We had a look online and saw that there was quite a lot to see there, which was indoors. So we thought, right, let's just head there and have a look. It was a little bit random. It was lots of old farming machinery, some military history. It was still quite interesting. We kept out the rain, saw a heap of random farm machinery and all sorts of collectibles and things that they had there. And then it was time to head on to our accommodation. We checked into the Bunbury Lakes Caravan Park and spent the rest of the evening just relaxing in the motorhome as the weather wasn't great. The next day we headed to Bunbury Wildlife Park. This is opposite Big Swamp and that's where we parked. Big Swamp, home to a lot of bird life there. We saw this lovely swan and some cygnets. I also thought this sign was quite funny that you're not allowed to dump your own ducks here, which I never really thought of being an issue, but I guess in Big Swamp it is. Bunbury Wildlife Park is home to mostly native Australian wildlife. It's very relaxed. You can buy a bag of pellets as you walk in and you can actually just walk through the paddocks and feed lots of different animals, which is always quite fun. We saw ducks, a wombat, emus and kangaroos. It's actually quite nerve-wracking feeding the kangaroos. They were quite specific in their instructions that you had to hold your hand out and they come over and they kind of hold onto either side of your hand with their claws. And they say, don't move your hand away too quickly, I guess because then maybe they might get aggressive or they might grip onto you with their claws. We also saw this peacock getting around, strutting his stuff, trying to impress anyone. He was to impress a couple of pigeons who just were not interested. Very beautiful to see. That afternoon we decided to go for a bit of a walk around Bunbury. The weather wasn't great and we didn't really find that there was, apart from the wildlife park, there wasn't that much to really do in Bunbury. It may have been because the weather wasn't great, that kind of always puts a bit of a dampener on things. We did walk over to the Dolphin Discovery Centre, which was unfortunately closed. They did have a cafe that was open there. We decided to get some ice cream and then walked back. Next day we got up early, the weather was beautiful and we headed out to Collie. As we headed out to Collie, we did try to go to, it must have been an apple farm or a brewery. It was closed. We just did a little photo shoot in some of the orchards that were nearby. We then drove into Collie town itself and had a little bit of a walk around. We went to the Anzac Memorial Park that they have there, which was absolutely beautiful. One thing we always find with these small regional towns is that the parks, the landscaping there is always incredible. They're always so clean and tidy. and they had some really beautiful big trees in the park. We were there not long after Remembrance Day, so also some wreaths on the memorial still. Our next stop was to Black Diamond Lake. I had seen this on Instagram and had worried that it was going to be an Instagram versus reality moment. The water in the Instagram pictures always looks just so blue, and I kept thinking we're going to get there and it's just not going to look like that. But no, it does look like that in real life. Black Diamond Lake used to be a coal mine. It was mined for coal in I think the 40s and 50s. It was then left open and it has naturally filled up with water. Because it was an old mine, definitely don't drink the water there. If you are going to swim, make sure you wash yourself off properly after. It's a really nice spot if you have a stand-up paddleboard to take it on there because it is very, very calm water. We drove to a couple of different spots on the lake and got some pictures. I think many years ago you might have been able to free camp there, but that's all gone. The base of the lake is like a really chalky, muddy kind of substance. It was a little bit strange. Tom drew the short straw and I forced him to jump in order to get some content. We took some quick photos of Tom in the water and got him out before he like grew an extra arm or something. Went back to the motorhome and had lunch, and because everything had to be made into content, here's some pictures of me eating a platter, looking out the window at the lake. It's a really beautiful spot though, definitely head there and check it out. After Black Diamond Lake we drove to Honeymoon Pools, and this was just such a picturesque spot. The Collie River runs through there. It was really shallow. They had a kind of boardwalk jetty. You can actually camp there as well. Check it out online. I don't quite know the full details. We were there a few years ago. It might have changed. I'm pretty sure it was only tents or rooftoppers that could camp there. I don't think you could get caravans in, but double check that. Beautiful spot, worth checking out. Our final stop in the Collie area was to Gnomeville. It's very interesting, but it's a little bit creepy. I definitely wouldn't want to be there at night. I think it would just be too creepy. It is quite impressive seeing the sheer number of gnomes that they have there. Really interesting. If you know you're going to be coming through this area on a trip, maybe bring a little gnome with you to leave there. Definitely worth checking out. You only really need about 20 minutes there, and they have good parking. The area around Collie was beautiful. We only saw a few of the sites there, but you could definitely spend a few days exploring the area. I watched a lot of people doing their big laps, and lots of people miss this area. There are some places on the coast which I think are a little bit same. If you wanted something a bit different on your trip, head into the Collie area and have a look. After we finished up in the Bunbury area, we headed south again and we headed to Busselton, and this is going to be the final stop for this video. The only place we really visited in Busselton, and I feel like this is where a lot of people only go as well, is to the jetty. It is a beautiful jetty. I believe it's one of the longest in the southern hemisphere. I feel like every town with a jetty says that, but I feel like this one might be the longest wooden jetty, I want to say. Very beautiful, very picturesque. They have the beautiful blue gift shop there on the end, quite iconic. You can take lots of lovely pictures there. The beach there is really nice as well, and they also have a swimming section on one of the sides too. We have booked ourselves onto an underwater observatory tour, which is at the very end of the jetty. The jetty is 1.6 kilometers long. I think we also had to pay to go onto the jetty in addition to our observatory tour. If you're not doing the observatory tour and you do want to go on the jetty, you do have to pay. It's $4. A lot of people whinge about it. I get it, in most places you don't have to pay to go on the jetty, but if you're going through there, if you're going to do it once, I feel like just pay the $4 and do it. We walked along the jetty all the way to the end. There is a small train that runs along there as well. Again, you have to pay extra. We just decided to walk, it's not too far. At the very end, they had some murals painted on the floor. I think there were a couple of whales. They also have one of the signposts at the end, which tells you how far it is to other destinations around the world, which I always find really interesting to see. And then it was time for our underwater observatory tour. We go in, they keep you at the top of the steps in a group and tell you exactly how the tour is going to run. I think there may have been about 20 of us on the tour. We then started heading downstairs, and as you go down the stairs, getting lower and lower, I think it goes down to 8 meters in total. They have windows as you head down the stairs, So you can see all the different marine life. You can see the changes in, I guess it's the coral or algae that grows on the jetty legs. The tour for the most part is guided. As you're going down, they tell you all about the different marine life that's at different levels as you head down. The star of the show though for us was this octopus. As the tour guide was standing giving us lots of information, this little octopus just appeared on one of the windows, sat there for a little while and then climbed all the way up the window to the top. It's not often you get to see the underside of an octopus in detail. Upper glass window as well was quite interesting. You can see all its little suckers on its legs kind of sticking to the window as it went up. It was a really good tour. You do have to book it in advance. I would say if you're heading to the Busselton area, look into it. This brings us to the end of part 1 of our Perth to Albany road trip. In the next one, we are going to explore Margaret River's beautiful beaches. We pat some huge rays. We head out on a full day tour with Margaret River Discovery Co. Find some huge trees. We head to Green's Pools and we make our ways to Albany. As always, please leave any questions in the comments section below. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss next week, and I'll see you in the next one.